being in a quiet kitchen and just chopping an onion is literally like one of my like favorite things.
Chopping an onion, though, is very ambitious because for a therapeutic thing because the fumes or do you have, like, a special hack or trick for not crying while doing it, or just is crying part of the
I
process
think
just to kind of cleanse the
that's a
soul?
good question. I think crying is part of the process.
Welcome back to Sprung on Food, an interview-based show where the overall topic of conversation is food. I'm your host, Kae Sprung. This season, I'm talking to food content creators, and my next guest is Misha Simon, also known as "'Tis Rare We Get Out" and Misha's Kitchen. Let's get into the show.
Misha is the creator behind the social media account "'Tis Rare We Get Out." He started posting his food content during the pandemic, and as a result of building his TikTok social media following, he was able to turn it into a business while also working as a general manager in the restaurant industry in the DMV area. Misha, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate. "'Tis Rare We Get Out" was kind of a celebratory cheers at the pub I used to work at. It was an Irish pub, and all the Irish regulars and workers would say, "'Tis rare," before you had like a sip of your drink. And it stemmed from "'Tis rare we get out." It was just like this thing that they said. And we had always talked about creating a show or something along those lines where we would go out in DC and look at restaurants and review them, and "'Tis rare we get out." And then during the pandemic, it really was rare that we got out. And I think that played along with people being like, "Oh, that's kind of like a creative name. Like, it is really rare that we get out. So let's follow his food channel." And it's just kind of gone from there.
I'm excited to have you here. And I know from your accounts you love to cook. Do you personally have what you would consider a signature dish of yours?
Oh boy, that's that's a good one. There definitely are a couple dishes that I lean towards, especially if I'm in the mood to cook, and that's obviously one of my big passions, and it's sort of a therapeutic activity for me. And when I'm in that sort of a mood, there's definitely a couple dishes. Tahdig is one of my go-tos. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Is that the Persian crispy rice?
That is the Persian crispy rice, and I grew up on that. My dad was born in Tehran, Iran, and he's actually Armenian. He's 100% Armenian, but grew up in Iran, and just, huge part of his cultural background and growing up with that sort of family dynamic. I had Tahdig all the time growing up, and sort of a very particular food for Iranians, has to be done a certain way. And, having the tips and tricks from him and critique from him and family members doesn't hurt in the long run to kind of perfect that sort of a dish. And that's definitely one of my go-tos. Usually it's coupled with, some sort of meat or other food, but I've worked pretty hard. I make it probably 3 times a year at least, and I try to do variations on it, but most of the time I'm actually just making the tahdig because I wanna work on really making it as good as it can possibly be. That's definitely one of my go-tos. I'm big on desserts when it comes to cooking. So recently, flan has been a big one of mine. I love it as well from growing up. My mom is Puerto Rican, and I had it a bunch growing up from her side of the family, but recently, it's just been something similar to the tahdig where I want to kind of perfect the dish, and I love the outcome. Both of them, ironically, both have a very beautiful look to them on top. The crispy rice is like golden brown. The flan has a caramelized top as well, so they actually look kind of similar, ironically. But yeah, those two dishes definitely go-tos for mine. But the list could go on when it comes to those sort of popular foods that I like to cook when it comes to, especially like I said, like a therapeutic sort of thing for me. I used to say this early on when I was making my videos that being in a quiet kitchen and just chopping an onion is literally like one of my like favorite things. It's just like super calming and relaxing. And if I was ever in like a bad headspace or just needed to kind of relax a little bit, that would kind of be something that I would go and do.
Chopping an onion though is very ambitious because for a therapeutic thing because the fumes, or do you have like a special hack or trick for not crying while doing it, or just is crying part of the
I
process
think
just to kind of cleanse the
that's a
soul?
good question. I think crying is part of the process. I've had good and bad experiences when it comes to the crying part of it, where I have cried a lot, and then there's times where it doesn't. But I think for me, it is more of it's like the sound of it. It's the sound, the process,
Mm.
using the knife, the cuts. There's different types of ways to cut onions. Tips and tricks. That's another good question because especially on TikTok and on social media nowadays, you have all these like food hacks and tips and tricks. And I want to say I've never tried it, but I want to say that chewing gum is supposed to help with that, prevent yeah, prevent the crying. I also know
Re-
that having like a paper towel or a wet paper towel next to you can also help prevent that because it absorbs something within the onion that causes your tear ducts to, kind of go. And yeah, I've never, like you said, I'm
Whoa.
more like you said, it's part of the process. So I don't really worry about it.
Yes.
And if I start crying, I know I'm doing something right. So
Right, it just helps you know that you're alive.
yes.
The gum thing, that's wild to me. Is that I wonder if that's like a psychosomatic thing, or like the tips that you've seen, does it explain the science behind that? Is it supposed to
I don't
distract you, or does it really actually work? I'm so curious. Are you gonna make a video about that?
I
Please
should.
do.
Maybe I should. Yeah. The gum, I
See if it
don't
works.
remember the scientific part of it. The paper towel, I do remember them explaining when I watched the video
Okay.
that it absorbs something that when you're cutting the something within the onion is released and the paper towel is supposed to absorb it so it no longer gets
Yeah.
into your eyes and causes you to cry.
Oh boy. I usually just suffer through it, but I think if somebody had a major aversion to it, swimming goggles, just you may look like a lunatic, you may look crazy, but it'll work. Uh
I
I
think
wanted
that's a
to
good idea for a video. Somebody's wearing goggles while they're cutting an onion, just kind of like, what are you doing? But people would
I
get it.
mean, it's people would get it and it's entertaining if
Right.
nothing
Exactly.
else. And it would work and you'd be tear free at the end, I'm
There
pretty
you go.
sure. I want to circle back to your signature dishes. You mentioned that you have tried to perfect or are perfecting, and your dad is very skilled in the tahdig. What have been the learning curves, or what are those necessary steps to be able, and you don't have to give any proprietary secret information, but what are those measures that you need to take, or what makes it so perfect? Because actually, I have not had the pleasure of having it, but it looks spectacular. And once upon a time, I used to watch the show. I don't know if you're familiar with the Shaws of Sunset, and they featured that dish. And it always looked so spectacular. And so I aspire to try it. But what what are those things that make it so important to get just right?
So there's a few immediately that come to mind. So there, and I got kind of, TikTok is sort of relentless in the comment section. Instagram is becoming
Yes.
that. I think early on Instagram, I felt like it was a safer space in terms of not getting critiqued
Interesting.
or harassed over the food, but it's all part of the game at this point. But on TikTok early on, when I would post these dishes, people would come after me in the comment section. And I had people even making, like duets, or they would like reaction videos, especially usually Asian creators who are very specific and particular about the way that you cook rice and you treat rice. And so to start off, this is a big one that my dad always reinforced, was that you have to rinse your rice before you cook it
Yes.
to get some of the starchiness out of it. And that's a big part of it. So you have to, whether it's you let it sit in a bowl for a little bit and you wash it, and you actually wash it until the water
It's
it's
clear.
clear, until the water's clear. So
Yes.
that's a big one, and a lot of people did not like that.
They did not like that you rinsed the rice, or
Correct.
that, because I would think the opposite, that if that step was skipped, people would freak out.
Oh no, I mean,
But
I can't remember exactly how I made it, but I remember somebody made a reaction video, kind of being like, "Oh, why would you do that? Why would you rinse your rice?" And yeah,
oh, how
and
interesting.
then on top of that, they also kind of went crazy because you only it's like part cooking it, so you only cook it for a certain amount of time. You boil it after you rinse it, and very in heavily salted water, because that's the seasoning gets infused that way. You don't add salt in any other part of the process, the way that at least that I'm cooking it. And for the tahdig, and after you part cook it, you strain the rice. And this people actually like really lost their mind. They're like, "Oh my God, how dare you strain your rice?" And because in Asian methods, you put enough water in that it would absorb it properly,
It
and that's
absorbs.
it.
I see. Okay.
And in this method, you put well over the amount of water you need, because you're eventually gonna strain it. And when you're par cooking it, you don't worry about the amount of water necessarily. You make sure there's enough to cover it, but after that, all the water gets it's disposed of, so you're not worrying too much about it. And that's all the water you're using during the entire process. After that, you're taking the rice, and here is where I kind of have been told certain methods, because the main ingredient aside from the rice is saffron. And the
Mhm.
big thing here is being able to create an extract with the saffron threads that you then put into the rice. But there's a few different ways. There's a few different ways to create the extract. There's a few different ways to then implement the extract. And I've tried it a few different ways. A few different ways have worked really well for me. So I find that there isn't one perfect way to do it. What a lot of Persians kind of came after me with the first couple times I posted videos, because what I would do is grind the saffron threads into a powder and then add boiling water. They didn't like that, because very traditionally they would use an ice cube and just put the ice cube right on top of either the threads or the powder. They didn't really mind that way as much, but I think they do just prefer threads. They prefer the whole threads. You put an ice cube in it and you just let the ice cube melt, and it creates an extract that way. Some would claim that the boiling water can affect it a certain way. I have not found that to be true. Same way with the threads versus the powder. I've had good results both ways. I like the powder more because it disperses more evenly, and the color seems to be a little bit
More vibrant.
more bold.
Yeah.
Yeah, more vibrant and bold that way. So I've done it a couple different ways that way. And then what you would end up doing is using this extract, which is just a water extract, on the bottom of the pan before you lay the rice down, with butter. And then using that method, I've also taken butter and infused itself with saffron,
Ooh, double
because I know that it's going at the
saffron.
bottom. Right. Yes, exactly. Double saffron. And then most recently, I actually made it 2 days ago. I literally, so it was just one of those days where I was like, I'm going to make tahdig. And what I ended up doing, because I'm actually working on developing my own saffron salt that will hit market in the next few months. And I ended up using saffron salt in the boiled water that you part cook the rice, and that way it actually infuses the rice that way and gives it a color, because that it's funny because the saffron threads are red, beautifully red, and the extract is the same way, and then once it hits the rice, it's yellow,
Yeah.
like super bright yellow. And that was a new method that I tried, and I think it worked really well. Like you said, double saffron, because then I also put it at the bottom of the pan, and then you're just layering the rice. You want to make sure that the bottom is kind of pressed to create that very crispy, even base. Especially when you flip it, you'll have a nice top that's super golden yellow and crispy. And you put the rest of the rice in. Some people like to create little like holes or divots to let the steam release from the bottom. But either way, when that happens, you're usually wrapping a towel around the lid and then cooking it with the lid over top, and that towel will absorb all the moisture that would be rising. So you don't want that. You don't want the water dripping back down and kind of ruining that crispiness that you've created. And that gets cooked for about an hour to an hour and a half. So you probably want to rotate the pan a couple times so that everything gets cooked evenly. And then you're usually adding butter afterwards. When it's done cooking, you would take a few like slabs of butter around the sides of the pan, a couple in the middle. This helps it release also nicely, and then you flip it over, and then you have beautiful tahdig.
Holy cow. Well, because yes, the butter would be important. Have you ever had a situation where maybe you forgot to do that and it got stuck in the pan?
No, because the butter, remember, the butter's on the bottom of the pan to begin with, so
Uh-huh.
that
That's the
usually will
insurance.
help.
Okay,
That
yes.
is the insurance, but the butter, I think the butter at the very end of the process, one adds flavor and creates like a sort of a texture within the rice that makes it really enjoyable. And I think with that sort of a dish with rice, you're also just like my dad was like, you can't forget the butter. And he would, like, put butter everywhere, and it's like, it's obviously gonna make it a little bit better and tasty. So yeah, can't forget that.
Oh my, I feel so inspired now. And I think to your point earlier about social media and comments, which I would like to tap into just a little bit. I don't want it to be a distressing topic, but I think in my mind, where a lot of people get very fired up is maybe they grew up making it one particular way from their family. And that's the way that they knew, and that's the way that they knew it was done. And if there are variations of that, maybe other people make it a different way. And to them, that is the one singular way to make it. And if there are any deviations from that, it is wrong. I mean, I don't know. I can only presume that's why people would maybe get fired up about your process of the saffron or whatever else they're getting up in arms about, the rice situation. I mean, if people were cooking the rice all the way through, you just have a bunch of like soft, fluffy rice, which is the antithesis of what you want for it's
Right.
crispy is in the name of the dish, right? So
Right.
that's not what you're going for. So I think that a lot of do you find now you said that you've kind of you do not do you or do you not pay attention to comments? Or has that evolved throughout your time on
100%.
social media?
100% the latter there. Definitely evolved early on. I think it was hard at first because I was new to the social media realm in terms of being a creator, and nobody wants to see those. Nobody wants that sort of reaction from, especially one, just your general audience, but then you start to see the same people commenting and reacting to your videos, and usually those aren't the ones that'll come after you, but either way, you don't want to see that. And you also need to be careful, especially once you start generating money and you're earning from it. And you need to be careful when you have like brand partnerships, and you don't want to get a bad MO across your socials as like this type of person, or they can't take criticism. And early on, it would be something I would carefully respond to and try not to like lose my cool about it.
Mhm.
And as time went on, I think I just lost my patience for being that careful with the comments. And not like I respond to them at this point in a mean way or a bad way, but now I'm just not afraid of speaking my truth, and I just get it out there. I'm just like, this is and now I do it very sarcastically in a way where people can tell that I'm either joking, or I'm not giving you a real answer, because I think the same way that the reaction from a creator standpoint has evolved, so has the sort of relentlessness of people to try to evoke some sort of reaction from the creator.
Uh-huh.
And, people will do that as like a game almost, and try to get you to bite, try to get you to really take a stab at them. And sure, like, I'll do that every now and then, but most of the time now, I'm just kind of like, oh, I'm trying to think. I made a cheese wrapped pickle. It's called a pickle in a blanket. It was a TikTok thing. I recreated the video, and I used grated Parmesan cheese, pre-grated Parmesan cheese, which recently there's been a lot of talk about how there's the process used creates there's like they use like wood chips or something like that goes into the cheese. I've never noticed any wood chips in my grated Parmesan, but some people or somebody commented was like, why don't you just use real cheese? And my comment back was, oh, because I only like fake cheese. And just like kind of that playful sarcasm.
Right.
And that comment of mine got a lot of likes from the people who were watching the video because they were just like, oh, like it's a joke, and it's a funny reaction. Where some people may take that comment and turn it into like a big argument where they may dismiss the claims that the cheese has made a certain way with things in it. I mean, it started with TikTok. I see it on Instagram now, but there are just so many. TikTok seemed to have less of a filter, I think, in terms of not exposing those type of videos. But Instagram, I see it a little bit more these days. And yeah, I worry for the future of our social media platforms that way. And now with the expansion and development of AI, it's going to be hard to tell what is real and what is not, and what is true and what is, probably in the next 5 to 10 years, probably much sooner than that, honestly, because I look at AI and it feels like it's made such a massive leap within the last year, very quickly, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. But I've talked about it with friends and family, and they've kind of made the point that it's not really an option to not be a part of it at this point. It is the future. You just have to, like, the same way that it was with technology, especially the internet and devices like that. It was like, okay, a lot of the older generations were like, why are you always on, you're always watching TV, you're always on your phone, you're on that, you're on this. But now they have to is like the key terms there, because most of the time it now is implemented into their jobs. And if you're not familiar with it, if you can't use it, you're just kind of left in the dust, unfortunately. But it's going to be the same way with AI. And I was talking about it with my brother, and he was just like, you need to go and research and begin to learn how to use AI apps, because that is the future. And if you do not learn, somebody else will, and you will be miles behind them in terms of progressing with your content and just the future of the world. So
It's so true that if as scary as it might seem, or as much out of our wheelhouse as it might seem, if you don't start to either educate yourself on these new technologies and new things, or start to implement them yourself, you do unfortunately get left behind in some capacity. If you're somebody who's off the grid and technology as a whole has really nothing to do with your lifestyle, your livelihood, or anything like that, wonderful, blessings. But for most other people, there is going to be some infiltration of that into day-to-day life, work life, or what have you. And as you spend more time avoiding it, it becomes, I think, more intimidating, maybe to start incorporating that and jump onto that train. So if you can start to adapt, or at least become knowledgeable to a degree of what's going on in the landscape,
right,
it kind of, it doesn't isolate you as much.
right, exactly.
Oh my gosh, you know what I just thought of as I was about to say, we have real life creators like yourself that are making content. What if we start having, I know years ago, I don't know if this avatar or thing still exists, but years ago there was this, I'll just call it a character for lack of a better word, called, I think it was called Lil Michaela. Do you know about Lil
No.
Michaela? There were probably others as well. And it was like this avatar created that was not supposed to look unbelievably like a real, I mean, it was modeled after a person, like a human, but it wasn't that kind of thing, like a deep fake where you have to like squint and be like, oh my God, is that a real person or not? Like it was kind of apparent that it was like not, but it was kind of an avatar, and she was created as like a social media influencer and would do like these brand partnerships and like with clothing brands, and they would dress the avatar. And I think it was one person behind it. Again, this was a few years ago, so I'll have to brush up after this, but she had a huge following. It became like a whole thing, and brands were paying like stupid amounts of money to have like these collabs or these partnerships with Lil
Hmm.
Michaela and whatever. And so now I'm thinking, now that you bring this up, and I started to go one way and now I'm thinking another, do you think that there will soon be content creators that are just like purely AI?
Oh,
Is
for
that like a
sure.
you do?
All right. Well,
Oh, no.
oh, you mean the actual creator is an AI pre-programmed
Yes.
account?
Kind of, yeah, or like or the technology exists to where maybe, uh yeah, like, however it's formulated, I'm not exactly sure,
Sure.
but like, for example, one of your videos, let's take the fact that you have your VO on there and your image on there, let's swap it out with, like, purely AI generated stuff, and, like, that's a creator. Like,
So
like, I don't know, I'm making my brain hurt because I
no,
can't
no,
really,
no.
like,
I
fathom it all, but, like
they're all good questions and good thoughts because I've seen a few different variations when it comes to that.
Oh,
Um,
really? Oh,
well, I don't know about the actual account because I think the way that you're thinking about this is that the account itself is AI. Like
yeah.
you make an algorithm in a program that creates like 10 accounts that are all AI and they all have their own specific way of posting videos. And yeah, I think that's definitely possible. I don't know if that exists right now. There is a food account that is, I don't know, you may have seen it as well, where this person uses a lot of times it's like spaghetti or linguine type pasta, and they have these two kind of figures or silhouettes of like people dancing, and the spaghetti forms them, and they're just like moving on like a plate with like sauce, and
Oh,
it's
I
like a
haven't
very
seen
funny,
this
like
yet.
cool kind of like,
Okay.
oh, look at this, and that's all they post. So they're
Huh.
not doing any content creation. They have like they're not like an animated or an editor that is creating these like by whatever the process would be when making like an animated film. They have a tool, an AI tool that they punch in. Like, I want to see spaghetti forming the shape of two humans dancing in a bowl with tomato sauce, and that's all it is. And then they put a song in the background that goes well with the dancing, and that is all they do. That is all they post. That is the entire account. But I mean, this account gets millions and millions of views, and that
What a niche.
yeah,
My
and it's like
God. You're gonna have to share this information with me afterward because I am so intrigued. And is the account very open? Like, how do you know that
it came up
it's
randomly. It wasn't even an account that I followed, and I think it's literally like something along the lines of dancing pasta. It's like that's like the account name, and that
but
very
the fact
simple.
that it's all AI done by the tool that they're using is all AI. Is are they explicit about that, or that's just what you've gleaned from it?
I think the latter there, but I may be wrong. That it could be a very
Wouldn't it be
skilled
something?
animator that is doing this, but
Yes,
I
yes, and
just
they're like, "You're disparaging my craft."
exactly yeah.
Well, so we'll put the disclaimer and the caveat that, like, purely conjecture. We are not sure. We will do some research.
This is one that I was just like, wow, that is like super cool. This person's like, the pasta arms for the from the spaghetti are like moving as they're dancing, and the song just worked really well. And then I looked at their page, and it's all the same type of video, but millions and millions of views. And I think it's awesome that it is a possibility to create those kind of things. But I think a lot of creators would be frustrated, especially with someone with a page like mine that goes through the process that I go through, where I'm creating from the very inception of the project, the idea. I then have to go buy the ingredients. I then have to think about how I'm going to film it, go through that whole process, which can be hours upon hours of filming, and then you get into the editing of it, and you look back at a video like that, and you're probably like, this person probably spent like 15 minutes plugging in something
Mhm.
to their program, and then they turn around and brands are like, oh, we want to work with you, we want this, we want that, and it's like,
Right.
that is very frustrating. But at the end of the day, you have to give them credit where credit's due and be like, you took advantage of this, and this is the wave of the future, unfortunately, that you can, as long as you have the right tools and you know how to use them, which was the kind of advice that I had mentioned my brother telling me and advising me like you have to get on board with this if you want to keep up with everybody. And he had mentioned something similar where he was talking about an AI program, and he didn't know if it existed or not, but he's like, it will exist, where you will be able to plug in your like 20 of your videos, and the program will learn your voiceover. It will learn your editing techniques. It'll learn how quickly your transitions are, and you will then be able to you'll be able to take your raw footage, plug it into the program, and within 10 seconds, it will give you a video that just like the one you created, and you will have that, and it'll, save you hours of editing, because that is just how it's going to work, because AI is that impressive. And yeah, it's not something I think most of the content creators are ready for. And, they're now, especially since the beginning of the pandemic with TikTok, and I was a part of it. I went from I actually started out my TikTok channel. I was making soccer videos.
Is that right?
Yeah, I would go and juggle a soccer ball, and I learned TikTok's editing platform and editing tools from that. During the pandemic, I was stuck at home. I would take a soccer ball outside, and because I used to watch a lot of soccer videos and all these people doing skill tricks, and I was like, I can do that. I played soccer my whole life, and I can juggle fairly well, and I just wanted to recreate something that like I was watching. So I would just take my phone, I had a tripod, I would go outside and I would do these videos, and then I would edit it using their tools. And that's how I became really familiar with editing software and those editing tools. And it then became I ended up getting injured. I couldn't juggle anymore. And I've always been big about cooking and very passionate. My family, everybody cooks in my family, so that was a big part of it. And then one day I was just like, I can make a video of cooking, because I've already made videos of me playing soccer. And it's funny because I spent so much time on my soccer videos, and people couldn't care less.
Do they still exist?
I have them stored in on like a Google Drive.
You archived them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I have them.
You learn these things along the way to refine everything as you go. And you had mentioned too that your process is pretty robust. And a lot of times I don't think people understand the hours and preparation and post-production that goes into a single less than 1 minute video. What does your process look like?
So I mean, when I'm going to film something, I know that I have the idea. I have like a list of ideas and videos that I want to try to accomplish. Being that I have a full-time job, it's very difficult, post COVID, when I lost my job, I wasn't working, I had so much free time. I could spend as much time as I wanted working on these videos, and having a job makes that a lot harder and difficult to prioritize. But when I have time, I will pick one of the ideas from that list. I'll go and buy the ingredients and order whatever I need to make it, and then I will pick out a time slot during the day that usually coincides with the lighting in my kitchen, which is natural lighting. And it wasn't always that way. During the pandemic, I lived with my parents, and they have a really beautiful kitchen, and they have under lighting on their cabinets, which is what I always filmed with, and never natural light. And it worked so well. And I actually have under lighting now in my apartment, but it's not the same. And I don't know why. It could be that it's also coupled with the natural lighting a lot, but I've done it at night, and it's not the same look. Like the under lighting that my parents had was perfect. And I used to get comments from big creators being like, how do you get your images to look so good? And I'm just like, I don't know. Like, it's just my kitchen, my parents' kitchen.
You're like, I just need to move back in with you guys because the content is just too good.
I used to go back and film there because I didn't want to lose the imagery that I was creating. And on top of it, their kitchen was very beautiful. It was bigger. They had a big island in the middle that was kind of my like trademark beginning intro to the videos. I would like hold whatever I was making, be like, I'm gonna make this today, and then the background was like the cabinets, which are really beautiful white. The backsplash was really great, and I knew leaving that setting was going to be tough, and I didn't really want to. So I did that for a little bit. Then it became just too, I don't live super far away, maybe like a 30-40 minute drive, but then it just became time consuming to make that trip just to go film. Their kitchen wasn't necessarily set up for filming either. So like I would go back, I'd have to move stuff around. And it became just this process that I was like, you know what, I'm gonna save myself 2.5 hours by just filming here. And it didn't go over super smoothly at the beginning. My views went down dramatically. Oh yeah.
Really? Because of the people visually adapting to a different
I think they
platform?
just didn't, they were so used to seeing my intros with a certain setting that when it wasn't, they were like maybe
Wow.
confused. They were like, oh, this isn't the same person, or I don't know who this is. I don't know what this is. And they would just like, I mean, really,
Wow.
really dramatically drop the views. And this was also during the time where reels were created, and I wanted to start infiltrating that platform, and then started doing reels, and the same way TikTok allowed it. And it took a while. It took a long time to build any sort of a following. And actually, where I'm at now, I just reached 200,000 followers on Instagram. I know, woo, that was it.
Hey, congrats. I mean, that's no
Yeah,
small
and
feat. I know your TikTok following has far
right.
surpassed that, but yeah, to your point, I think it is well, you have experience. It's slower to grow on Instagram, you feel,
Yes,
or
it is, but
yeah.
now things have changed and evolved where
Mm.
my TikTok following has not moved in almost 2 years, I want to say. Literally, like
Interesting.
I've been
Oh
at
my gosh.
970,000 followers, so close to that million mark for like 2 years.
Yeah. How do we get
Well,
you
but
there? Yeah,
I
I
think it
mean,
helps
what
if
is
I have like more time to be able to like produce content fluidly and consistently, but I don't. I can't. I
Mm,
don't have time to just like put out. I used to put out 3 videos a week. If I do that at all at this point, I am thrilled. If I get out 3 good videos in a week, I'd be like, hell yes, like that is unbelievable. I was able to do that with a full-time job, and like I said, it also
wow.
is. I pivoted and based these videos around the lighting in my kitchen. So there's a period in the morning where I have tons of direct sunlight lighting, which can be good sometimes. And then there's a period where that lighting slowly dwindles, and where I shoot the videos on my counter, it's like half direct sunlight and half indirect. And it looks kind of weird. And it's not,
Right. You're at the
yeah.
mercy of the sun and
And the
clouds,
best type of
literally.
lighting is indirect while the sun is still up, and that's what I usually try to wait for, and that's, like, after, like, 12:30 PM, so the whole morning, if I can catch it for, like, a brief hour where the direct sunlight's hitting it, it's great, but after that, I have to wait
Mm.
till around 12:30, which gives me around 2 hours or so, if that, before I have to go into work, and then it's like, I don't like, I need more time to do this, like, specifically, I was telling you about how I make tahdig. That's like a 3-hour process in terms of beginning to end,
Mhm.
just making it, let alone setting up. You have to go get the ingredients. You need to be prepared before you start that. In my uh, case, in order to eliminate some of that prep time, where a lot of times, if I don't have it, I'll just like make a quick run to the store. But that ends up being like 30 minutes to an hour to like go do that, and then you have to get your stuff set up, make sure I have everything right there, so I'm not like moving around the kitchen like grabbing stuff. I want all the stuff there before I begin shooting. And
You have to meet mise en place everything out.
yeah, exactly. And so that makes it a little difficult. Where I know a lot of creators just they have their kitchen set up like a studio where
Right.
everything's in place all the time, and they don't worry about that, you know, which is great. I wish I could have that maybe in the
Did
future.
you ever think about doing content creation full time?
I did. I tried it. Did not
Oh, and what happened?
did not work.
Did not work?
Did not work. I was
Interesting.
yeah. I took around a year off from having a standard full time job to try it out, and this was in the midst of being simultaneously reached out for big projects and
Mhm.
TV shows, and I was actually selected to be cast for a Netflix cooking show. And
Oh,
yes, and that was what spurred the initial decision to kind of leave the restaurant food industry to focus on food content creation. And, if there that also encompassed being on TV shows and cooking competitions, then, I was all about it. During the pandemic, they were trying to make TV shows and YouTube shows still. And I was selected to compete with, it was called Unboxed. And I ended up winning. And it was between me and like 3 or 4 other candidates. We filmed everything ourselves. There was a judge or 3 judges who were part of a panel that, looked over all the videos, and I ended up winning. And I was like, okay, this is possible. And, there was a monetary prize involved with that. And I was like, this is kind of like unbelievable what is happening. And once I was reached out to for this Netflix show, I was like, okay, I had to, I was blown out. This is still during the pandemic. So a lot of
right.
protocol in terms of, masks and isolating and things like that. And I tried it. I tried it for a year. I still had brand partnerships that was bringing in money and supplementary income, but it just wasn't sufficient enough over the long term
Mhm.
of that. I had worked with an agency early on when I was making my videos, and I ended up leaving the agency because it just felt like I could handle what they were providing in terms of service and correspondence with the brands. And then it kind of just felt like I was also not getting a lot of attention from them, to the point where they didn't even know about the Netflix show. And that was like,
Your own
and that
agency?
was
That
that was the
seems
breaking point.
very
I was like, "Do you guys
strange.
even know about this?" They like reached out, and
Wow.
they were like, "Oh no, like what do you mean?" And I was just like, "Okay." I was like, "Sorry, like I'm
Mm.
done. I'm done with this. I can do this myself and save myself the agency fee." And looking back on it, that may have not been the greatest decision because, like I said, it didn't end up working out. But at the time, I felt like that was easily something that I could handle myself, because the only thing I was doing was content creation. If it meant spending an hour looking at emails and responding to brands and that sort of a thing, not a big deal. The biggest part of it was when you got these contracts, was looking them over. I'm not a legalese by any means, and I was connected through LegalZoom to provided some assistance, but they're very specific about the amount that they can offer and the type of advice that they can give you. And it helped a little bit, and it actually gave me a lot of practice reading over contracts, and I've learned a lot in that realm. And yeah, so at this point, ever since then, I've handled my own projects that way. I've beginning to end campaigns. I do it all for myself. So saves a little bit of money in terms of that agency fee, which is usually around 20%. But at the same time, who knows how many other connections I could have made, and what other type of help I would have been provided through them over the years. But I don't regret it by any means. But it's hard to know. It's hard to know what the outcome would have been if I had stuck around.
We have a special
Well,
guest.
yeah, we do.
I love your special guest. Who is this?
Mowgli. That Mowgli.
Mowgli.
Yeah.
Ah,
White German
Mowgli.
Shepherd and
Mowgli, you are welcome to stay for the rest of this. I
I,
love dogs. This is like
I
two
think
for one of my favorite kind of content to watch and follow, dogs and food.
there
So
you
this
go.
is very exciting. You do have a job in the restaurant industry. I am a little bit curious though, because correct me if I'm wrong, you've held lots of positions within that, but not in the kitchen, correct?
Oh, right.
Uh,
Correct.
does does
Yeah.
anybody now that they've seen, I'm sure that they've seen your coworkers and whatnot, they've seen your content and know what you do. Does anybody there ever give you pressure or want you to hop into the kitchen or like do a special pop-up or something like that with your own unique menu?
Definitely no pressure that way. More curiosity. They're like, "Oh, so you're
Mm,
gonna like go and like work in a kitchen now, or are you gonna try to become a chef?" And that's never been something that I've ever really considered. I've worked in enough restaurants to know exactly what it's like in those kitchens. It's very hard work. The utmost respect to any line cook, chef that works in those crazy environments, long hours, sweating, and it is. I have a much different experience cooking in my kitchen comfortably, and being able to take breaks whenever I need to.
Yeah, we talked about the methodical onion cutting and everything. You wouldn't be able to do that if you were in a kitchen.
Not like that. That would be like,
You'd be crying for other reasons,
yeah,
but not
exactly.
because of cutting the onion.
Exactly. But yeah, in terms of not being pressured to do something, but even with the most recent job that I have, they kind of were like, "Oh, like, yeah, when are we gonna get you to do some videos?" And
Oh dear.
I'm like, you're not really, because that's my business, and I get paid to do that,
Yes.
and we can
Oh,
talk
they
about
wanted you
that.
to do it for free?
I think they were just kind of like, "Oh, like, we have, like, a TikTok channel. We would love if you, did some videos and, like, did something." And I'm like, "I honestly, I have so many great ideas for this restaurant that we could do, because our kitchen is unbelievable." I work at
How's
the
the
hall.
lighting? Is the lighting really good?
The lighting is pretty good, but it's
Okay.
more like, when you're in a kitchen, you don't mess with the kitchen. You don't, like, go and
Mm,
interrupt their process unless you're looking to get yelled at. The place I work at is called the Hall College Park. Incredible kitchen. It's pretty much a college bar, but I've never seen a kitchen operate this way for, like, college type food. Unbelievable. We have a big pizza oven. They make their own dough in house. They make like 50 pounds of mozzarella a week for the pizzas. Homemade mozzarella, like,
real
unbelievable.
cheese.
Real,
Real cheese.
real cheese, not fake cheese. When I first saw that, my mouth, like, dropped to the floor when I saw them making the mozzarella. I was like, "What?" I was like, "That is crazy." And they end up using the mozzarella for an appetizer as well, called the biggest mozzarella sticks, and they are, like, no joke, like a foot and a half long. Huge mozzarella sticks, 3 to an order. But it's just those kind of things. I'm like, in my head, I was like, I could film you guys making the mozzarella, showing how you use it in pizzas, and showing these mozzarella sticks, and it would be, like, mind-blowing to a lot of people.
How can others follow and support you? Plug away.
Well, definitely my social media channels. Tis Rare We Get Out is my Instagram handle. On TikTok, it is different. I've changed it to Misha's underscore kitchen. So at least people know me by my name there. YouTube, I'm working on releasing my own salt in collaboration with Josu, which is a Korean based salt. They have all different kinds of flavors, really great. I am working on releasing a cookbook as well. Yeah, follow Tis Rare We Get Out. Check me out, and thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed this.
Misha, thank you so much for sharing your story and spending time with me here today.
Thank you again. It was an honor.
Thanks for watching. You can find links and more info in the description below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. See you next time.